Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge, brought to you by the Hockey Writers, where we all get together, your Maple Leafs writing team, to talk about everybody's favorite team to love or hate. Joined by Jim Parsons Sr., aka the old Prof, Peter Baracchini, also the co-host of Six Sticks in the Six, as well as our rookie on the team, that's Alex Hobson. Gentlemen, we are right in between the two games with Edmonton, wrapping up a 9-game regular season series. And there's a thing out here in Alberta. You have two favorite teams. If you're north of Red Deer, your favorite team is Edmonton and whoever's playing Calgary. If you're south of Red Deer, other way around. I'm beginning to think that might be changing, because Toronto has won 6 of the 8 games. They have dominated them. We still remember that 3-game series where they almost shut them out all 3 games, 2.5 games of that. They have just dominated these guys, and it's a lot of fun to watch. Saturday night's game was a lot of fun to watch. Peter, let's start with you. What's your take on how come Toronto can play this team that is so good, and they play them so well?
I think it comes down to the matchup and the fact that, they got a lot of, well, maybe not as much as the Maple Leafs, but they got 2 of the best players in the league that are built on speed, skill, and that offensive drive in McDavid and Draisaitl. And they have, a relatively okay supporting cast. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is playing really great. Kyler Yamamoto's got some really great speed. And both teams just complement each other. And I think right now they're starting to get the Edmonton Oilers are getting a really good, somewhat of a good tandem with Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith, who was really good in the game on Saturday night. And now we're seeing that with Frederik Andersen and Jack Campbell. So the two teams really complement each other right now. The styles are relatively the same. I think you could give the edge to Toronto in terms of defense. Edmonton still has a ways to go, but I think that's why they're able to keep up and match up, because the star power is just unbelievable for both squads right now.
Yeah. You mentioned Mike Smith. He has been playing so well, and I'll date myself here a little bit, as I covered him when he was with the Sudbury Wolves before he was drafted.
Wow.
Big, tall, gangly guy. He's filled out since then, but he still had that same passion where if you get into his blue paint, you're going to get a stick across the back of the legs. And I think Edmonton, as soon as they signed him, I was like, why isn't anyone else signing this guy? He is a good player, and we're seeing it once again. And we've got the old Prof on the move.
So I am so sorry, guys.
I'm gonna let him get settled and go over to Alex then. With Alex, what's your thoughts on the ownership of Edmonton? And I will remind you that when they did get that sweep, somebody changed the Wikipedia page for the Edmonton Oilers and said the owner was the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was up there for a few minutes before it was changed, but they really are a different kind of team when they play the Oilers.
Yeah, it seems to that Wikipedia thing seems to happen every time there's a blowout in any sport. The owners all of a sudden changed. So I pity anyone who actually needs to find out who the owner of that team is if they go to check the day after. Anyways, yeah, I think Peter pretty much nailed it. I think it's the fact that the Leafs and the Oilers have a very similar system. They both rely heavily on offensive firepower. And we see McDavid and Draisaitl are dominating the leaderboard when it comes to scoring, and Matthews and Marner are right behind them. So they've both got those 2 bona fide superstars on the team. The Leafs do have the edge defensively this year, so I think that's what's really pushed them over the edge, because we saw, especially in that series where they swept the Oilers and almost shut them out in all 3 games, why did they not score? Because they shut down McDavid and Draisaitl. And I think if the Leafs defense hadn't given them the edge over Edmonton, maybe it would have been a different story. I know they're very evenly matched up when it comes to offense, but I think the Leafs do have the edge defensively this season. And throughout the games they played against Edmonton, I mean, they got a shutout from Campbell, they got a shutout from Hutchinson, and they got a good performance from Frederik Andersen. So their goaltending showed up as well. And I think everything just firing on all cylinders and everything kind of coming together all at once has been the main reason the Leafs have been so dominant against them this year.
Yeah, rolling into that game on Saturday night, the Oilers had won 7 of their last 9, while the Maple Leafs had only won 3 of their previous 9 games, and that was since that 3-game series that we're alluding to right now. So they were really going in different directions. And on our last Leaf Lounge, I told you guys that I was wandering around the River Valley here in Edmonton trying to find what the Maple Leafs forgot when they left Edmonton. And I'm wondering, maybe Matthews called up his buddy McDavid and said, "Can you throw that in your carry-on there? I forgot something. It's no big deal. Just throw it in." You know, because they are back to what we expected and what they were doing the last time they were playing Edmonton, really looking great. And I know the old Prof had a smile on his face watching that game on Saturday night as well.
I did, actually. And I certainly agree with everybody else. I thought the Oilers should have won the game, actually. And only the 2 fluke goals, Engvall's goal that bounced around, and Matthews' last goal just simply seemed to be a fluke. And, other than that, Mike Smith was really better than Jack Campbell last night. It was the Maple Leafs defense, I think, from top to bottom. They can roll out a defense that just shuts them down. And I think that's the biggest change in the team. But otherwise, I was really surprised when I saw the shots on goal were only 20 for the Oilers. And because it seemed to me that McDavid was free all night long and Draisaitl was chasing him down the ice and he was free too. But honestly, they didn't generate that many shots on goal. But I thought the Leafs defense held them in, and it was one of those games when the stars aligned that things were going to bounce around and go in. So it was a great game, exciting game. I think, though, I wrote a post in one of the early games. I thought it was the best game I'd ever seen between the Oilers and the Maple Leafs earlier in the year. I think it was the overtime when the Oilers won in overtime. It was a fantastic game. This was a good game too.
Mm-hmm. They really have been some great games. And, some of my friends here in Edmonton still remember when I say this. The first time McDavid and Matthews met in Edmonton, I was at the game and I came into work the next day and I said, that's going to be the Stanley Cup final in 3 years. That was supposed to be last year. So I was way off, but I do think that is going to be round 2 of the playoffs. And that would be just fantastic to watch. You saw Draisaitl's clip last week saying, he wanted to get back on the winning side against this Leafs team. And he said, we might be playing them 7 more games. So this is still a figuring out between these 2 great clubs. And it's just been so much fun to watch. And I'm excited to see the Monday. So if you're watching this on Tuesday, you're going to want to zip by everything we just talked about. But they are a lot of fun to watch. If you saw Keith's clip at practice on Sunday, he was still kind of down on how they didn't really defend Draisaitl and McDavid that well. And you could see, guys, if you guys have ever watched McDavid in person, try. I don't know if you have, but I've been able to get into some games here in Edmonton on when they were eliminated from playoff contention early on, and you get the cheap seats. You go just to watch McDavid. It's like a race, a NASCAR race. You can't get that speed until you see it in person. McDavid is so fast. And so Keefe was still talking about the fact that they're not keeping up with these guys. You saw Muzzin, even one of the greatest defensemen that the Leafs have right now, he totally cheated over, or was it Brody that cheated over? It was Brody, right, Peter?
That was Muzzin. That was Muzzin.
Muzzin, okay. Yeah. I knew you would know because we got a story about Peter's memory coming up. But Brody even cheating over to McDavid, knowing Draisaitl might be coming as well, and because he's just so fast. What do you guys think when you see the way that the defense is trying to contain these guys, Peter?
I think it's just getting a little too excited because they know that McDavid, his speed and his vision is just unbelievable. And that pass to Draisaitl, I mean, they were out of position, but that's just a thing of beauty. And I said this on Twitter, I'm like, McDavid isn't human. I mean, when he's pulling off plays like that and passes like that to wide open McDavid, when he's all the way close to the corner, it's remarkable in how he's able to do it. But I think the fact that they were able to shut them down for 2.5 games before, and then they kind of got away from it in like 12 minutes because they scored 3 goals in the span of, I believe, 12 or 16 minutes in that second period. But they were able to get it back and get their game plan on track to shut them down in the third period, which ultimately Campbell made a few great stops. They shut them down in the third, and it led to the comeback in the third period with that Galchenyuk, Tavares, and Nylander line. So I think it's a matter of fact that just, again, he's talked about consistency before and not getting too complacent. If they're able to do that, then shutting them down again for another game isn't entirely out of the question.
Mm-hmm. Keith's clip was great on that pass. He said there are 5 people on the planet that could have made that pass. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking there may have been 4 of those 5 were on the same ice at one time. It's great to watch those elite players go against each other.
Definitely.
Now, Alex, for the first time, we did see Jack Campbell, who you're a big supporter of Jack Campbell. You have been since you came onto our team here. And he beat himself up after that game. He wasn't very solid, really beat himself up after that game. He's got to put that out of his head and get back to business here. And I think we're about to see a real test on him as a starting goalie, putting maybe a soft performance behind you fast and getting right back to work.
Yeah, I mean, it was classic Jack Campbell in that press conference yesterday, if you want to call it that, to blame himself and put himself down. But I think William Nylander said it best when he said that Campbell is allowed a game like that because he's been, in most of the starts he's had this year, he's been the guy that's kind of bailed the Leafs out, or at the very least, he's kept them in the game. And so while, yes, he didn't have the greatest game yesterday, what he did do was make the big saves when the team needed him to. You saw him stop Connor McDavid when he was in his sweet spot right on the half wall on the right side. And he stood strong when they needed him to. So while the save percentage may not have been up there like it has been in previous games, Campbell's been great. And I think over the next couple of games, I think we're really going to get to see what he's made of as a starter, because he's never really had that opportunity to be a full-time starting goalie. I mean, obviously we all know his time in Dallas didn't work out in his favor. And when he got to Los Angeles, he was obviously stuck behind Jonathan Quick for the better part of the time he was there. And same deal when he got to Toronto. Freddie Anderson, when he's on his game, you're not going to take his job. So I think now with Freddie Anderson being out and Campbell being the Leafs' best option, the way he's played this year is he's got a perfect record. So I think we're really going to see what he's made of. And I think the Leafs are being very careful in the way they're handling him, and they're giving him regular maintenance days, and they're giving him chances to kind of get his health to where it needs to be and make sure he doesn't overdo anything. And I think if they keep doing that, we might have a legitimate goalie controversy down the line when Freddie Anderson comes back and he's healthy and ready to go.
Yeah. Sheldon Keefe also in practice today said he was asked about Freddie, and he said, no information on Freddie. I'll let you know when I know. And now we're getting into week to week on that. This is no longer day to day. We're on day 9 as of Sunday, and no signs of Freddie coming back here anytime soon. And that kind of led to an interesting article that had lots of people talking this week by the old Prof. Now, I want to talk to you about this one where you're saying maybe history is showing that the Leafs will be acquiring Jonathan Quick and Alexander Iafallo. Tell us a little bit about that story, Jim.
Well, I really didn't know much about Alex Iafallo, but Alex has been high on him since the very beginning, and I read my colleagues' work. And so I did. And then I saw a thing by Elliot Friedman mentioned Quick as a possibility that he's on the radar. And so I sat there and I thought to myself, there's a thing in education we call backwards design. Now that you have this, let's go backwards to see how it might be so. And so I did a little backwards design, and I thought, okay, what I know is that if Quick is on the thing, where does that come from? It seemed ludicrous to me at the very beginning, just ludicrous. And then I thought, okay, well, Campbell and Quick had a nice relationship in LA, probably. I mean, I don't think Campbell's changed his personality, so he probably was well loved there as well. Iafallo is a perfect fit for what the Oilers want to do. Dubas has a history of trading for twos. And he said this year he was going for a rental because that's the way contextually it seemed to work best given the salary cap stuff. So putting all that stuff together and tracing it backwards, I thought, in what world would Quick be of interest? In what world could they get Alex Iafallo? And in what world could you get? And I thought, okay, so I put it together and I started playing with that thought. And then I realized, okay, so they brought in Campbell and Kyle Clifford last season. They gave up. And I think, okay, so what if? What are all the what ifs? And so I was in the post, I was highly speculative because I hate this sort of clickbait stuff that people do. I hate plans with people. I try to give an honest insight, but I thought, is there a world in which that might be the case? And that's sort of what I spelled out in the post, that there's the logic is crazy, but if Dubas is always surprising me with some things that he does, so are we in for another surprise? And so I sort of played with that idea just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a very interesting read, and I kind of was on the same track as you, thinking that I don't see Quick in Toronto anytime soon. But then after reading it, I thought, well, you never know. We have no idea what's going on right now. So, but there was one that came out late last week where Carolina said they might put out one of their goalies, and if they could find a right-handed shot. Now, Toronto doesn't have a right-handed defenseman to give up, but they have some other things to give up that Carolina could possibly flip. And I was thinking, could James Reimer be coming back to Toronto? Could James Reimer, Peter, tell me I'm crazy. Could James Reimer be coming back to Toronto?
It's very possible. I mean, and like you said, Carolina is if Carolina is looking for a right-hand shot, Toronto's very sparse in that department. I think the only right-handed shot they would have is just Timothy Liljegren, and with the way that he's progressed right now and in the developmental system with the Marlies, I think Toronto may want to try and hang on to him. But as Kyle Dubas said, he's willing to part with a top prospect. Who that is, still up in the air, depending on the route that they go. But just going back to the Prof's article, I mean, it was a really well done article. And the fact that he was talking about a goaltender and a player, it isn't entirely out of the question where that could happen, but maybe with a different team. And last week, I heard that Darcy Kemper's name and Arizona could be selling a couple of players at the deadline. And bringing in Darcy Kemper right now, who is injured, and with the 7-day quarantine in effect for teams being traded with Toronto, Kemper's week to week. So that could play into the factor that if he makes a deal right now, he's still going to be on the IR. He can still heal up. And then when he comes back, the quarantine will be over because, he's injured. And also Connor Garland's name was also being rumored into the mix as well. Could it be a Kemper Garland situation? Again, all speculative until we get more information, but it's just a thought that after reading Prof's article that started to flow a little bit more in my head as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's put a bow. Sorry.
I was just thinking, I think Darcy Kemper is a great goalie, and I think Arizona's selling. And I think they want prospects back because they don't have the payroll to do much of anything else. So I would not be surprised if that were the case. I can see it. So I think Peter is onto something there.
And that extra player coming with Darcy would be Phil Kessel.
Yeah, I think we
still
better
paying
do
him. Come on. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would.
So let's put a bow on our goalie talk because Alex, you also had an article on the newest goalie to the Maple Leaf system, and Keefe doesn't even attempt to say his name. He goes with double V when he talks about him. So I'm going to go with double V. Tell us what you learned in researching that article on the newest Leafs goalie.
So first off, I want to go on the record and say I believe the name is pronounced Vaini Vevalainen. There's a lot of V's in there.
Well done.
It's difficult. And I pity Sorry.
100%.
My phone just started completely going off. I always have it on silent. I don't know why the ringtone was on. Anyways, yeah, getting back on track here. That completely threw me off. Yeah, I mean, I pity any broadcaster that has to say that name over the next couple of years. But to my knowledge, Vehviläinen was the Blue Jackets' best goalie prospect. And when I say goalie prospect, I'm not including Elvis Merzlikins and Joonas Korpisalo in the mix, because they've both been getting decent enough looks in the NHL that I wouldn't consider them to be prospects anymore. But what I do know is that Vehviläinen, when he was in Finland, which he played in Finland, I believe, up until before last year. And he had, I mean, what if you would consider it in Finnish terms, Vezina-like numbers over there. He had a goals against average under 2, and he had a save percentage, I believe, in the ballpark of 939, something like that. So he's a great goalie prospect. He was supposed to be one of the potential future names in Columbus, but obviously with their tandem over there, he wasn't getting too much of an opportunity. He came over to the AHL last year, and he had good numbers, but they weren't anything compared to the ones that he had in Finland. And he just hasn't been able to play this year. He's had one start in the NHL and one start in the AHL. And truth be told, I think that now that he's in Toronto, I think the Leafs are going to see what they have in him, because if Freddie Anderson's out for as long as we think he's going to be, like Kevin, you were saying that it's now a week-to-week thing as opposed to a day-to-day thing. All due respect to Michael Hutchinson, if you have another opportunity to check out a new goalie and see what you have in him, I don't know why the Leafs aren't going to take that opportunity, because Jack Campbell's obviously, he's going to be starting the bulk of the games from here on out as long as he keeps playing the way he is. But you're not going to start him for every game for the rest of the season, right? You're going to have to give him a rest at some point. And I think the Leafs are going to take an opportunity to see what they've got in Vehviläinen. And if he impresses, like I said, he was a 3rd-round pick in 2018. He's still relatively young. He's 24 years old. So I think the Leafs think they might have something there. And if they're willing to take him for the former KHL Defenseman of the Year and Mikko Lehtinen, I think they might see some life there, some potential.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a lot of good information on the goalie situation that's going on in Toronto, because like you said, this is further out now. Like talking about this season and the 20 plus games that we've got left in this regular season is one thing, but we got to start talking about next year and the year after that as well. And the goalie prospects in Toronto, I don't know where that is right now. So maybe the double V is the answer. Wouldn't that be something as well? Yeah.
And truth be told, I think that's another thing I meant to say. I think Vehviläinen, I said he was probably the top goalie prospect in Columbus. I think as of now, as it stands, he is probably Toronto's best goalie prospect as well. Joseph Woll has potential, but he had a weak season in the AHL last year. So I'm not sure he's done enough to warrant being given a look in the NHL yet, whereas Vehviläinen's already had a start. And then after that, they've got Ian Scott, who missed a lot of last year due to injury. And then they've got Artur Aktayamov, he would be a long-term project. So as of now, based on both experience and track record, Vehviläinen would be their top goalie prospect. So it'll be interesting to see what he's made of.
All right. Some great information there from our rookie on the team, bringing it as always.
I'm just gunning for the Calder.
I think you got it wrapped up at this point.
Come on.
Make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel. We've been jumping up in our subscribers and we love it. There's lots of different teams that report on this. So you know that this is your favorite one and your go-to one. But if you want to check out the competition, you can always look up theirs as well. So make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers here on YouTube and follow us on all your favorite social media channels at the Hockey Writers. And of course, all this great content that we're talking about, you can find on thehockeywriters.com. Now, found money is what is a few titles I saw in headlines today when it comes to Alex Galchenyuk. And you know it's getting good when I can say his name without even stuttering on it anymore. Galchenyuk, he looks like he is bounced right back. He's got speed again going. He's mixed right in there with Nylander and Tavares. And before last night's game, because he did start on the Saturday night game, he did start on the 4th line. And then he got moved up to the 2nd line again. And Keefe said, this isn't to say that he's been doing anything wrong. They just wanted to give Simmons a shot on that 2nd line again. Obviously, Keefe, he always goes by his gut. He moved Galchenyuk back up to the second line, and it paid dividends pretty quick there. He said that line was coming at them all night, coming at them strong, and he said they had determination. They looked like they wanted something to happen, and that's great when you're saying three guys working together like that. So, Peter, do you think that second line is firming up, and is Alex found money?
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote a little brief write-up today on Sunday about John Tavares giving some really great compliments and high praise for Galchenyuk, especially in that third period when they mounted the comeback, because that line literally was a difference maker for them. I understand what Keith was saying about Galchenyuk on the fourth line. Simmons was coming back before he got injured. He had 2 goals with them, and he seemed to really click on that second line. I guess in that moment, desperation or desperate times call for desperate measures, where he was juggling the line, Hyman back up with the top unit, and Galchenyuk back up with Tavares and Nylander, and it worked out. Nylander got a really great zone entry, gives the puck to Galchenyuk, no look pass to Tavares, he just snipes it by Smith. And then he's down below the goal line, spots Nylander in front, gives the puck to him. I mean, he had really great vision to try and spot Nylander and Tavares, and it worked out. And I guess we're all a little bit in shock and awe right now as to how quick Galchenyuk has developed from, sort of being like a fringe NHL player to now being a legitimate top 6 player for the Maple Leafs right now. And give credit to where the credit is due with the Maple Leafs development system, training staff, coaches, skating coaches, Greg Moore, the Toronto Marlies, everybody, because it's now paying off. And, maybe he is the top 6 forward right now. Maybe they don't even have to go out for another player, but he looked really good. And maybe if Keith is going to set on the same lines that he had in the third period, and Galchenyuk is starting, we could even possibly see his first goal, because he came very close that game as well.
He really did. Now, old Prof, you're always giving us some insight into the chemistry and how things might work. Talk about that confidence rebuild that you're seeing in Galchenyuk. And we've talked about everyone loves the reclamation project. It's really unfolding in front of our eyes right now.
Yeah, it was very interesting. After the game, I watched as I usually do, trying to get ideas for posts. I watched all the videos again and again. And he was in every single one of them, it seems. I just started watching him, and he seems big on the ice. In fact, I just looked up. He's only 6'1", but he seems like Draisaitl, right? It looked like Draisaitl on that line somehow. And I thought, this guy didn't think he was so big, but he's only 6'1", but he was everywhere last night, it seemed, and in that second period and third period. I mean, and it was really, really good. So I don't know about his confidence. I mean, he's scoring a point a game, so how can you fault that? So you have to have confidence after last night. I'm just thinking, I was thinking about something I think Joe Thornton said early in the year about his assists. And he said he played with good goal scorers. And I was thinking about, he mentioned Jonathan Cheechoo. I don't know if you remember Jonathan Cheechoo at all, but he scored like 56 goals one season playing with Thornton. And, and then he sort of went away. And it just strikes me that if you're with the right people, good things happen. And it just strikes me that he might be with the right people, because he not only picked up it really looked like Tavares, who I think people are sort of critiquing too much, but he looked like Tavares was really on his game too. So I thought that really was, if they're pumping each other up, that's a really good sign. So I'm hoping for everybody. And I mean, I'm going to go off page here just a little bit, but I really liked Tyson Berry's game last night. It was really good to see him playing well. And, he had such a tough year with the Maple Leafs, and he really has landed well with the Oilers, and God bless him. Good for him. I mean, he played really well, etc. So I'm always rooting for the reclamation project, as you say, but I hope Galchenyuk is that, because if Dubas hit a home run with him, wow. I think that's just amazingly fortuitous and good for the team. He can solve a lot of issues for this team.
You know, watching Tyson Barrie as well, and he got that goal and he looked good, as you said, and good for him to bounce back and rebuild his career. But still, if I could look at it, it was just Brody is a better fit with the Leafs setup right now, right? And even I bet if you could put both players in front of Dubas and say which one, he would still take Brody over that. And Barrie is fitting in very well with those two high octane Oilers. So everybody seemed to get what they wanted out of that deal, and good on Barrie for the bounce back.
No, you're right. And I think even I saw Brody make a mistake last night. And honestly, it was the first, if he did, it was the first mistake I've seen him make all season long. I always say he's the quietest defenseman I've ever seen in my life. You hardly ever see him. Nobody ever writes about him. I mean, even when we're doing posts on him, you think we can find a good photo of him? No, he's just impossible. He's just not anywhere, but he really is a solid defenseman. He makes so few mistakes. And I think he's just really value added to this team.
Yeah. Imagine if Dubas acquired him in that Nazem Kadri deal a year before instead of Tyson Barrie. Imagine how much of a different team this would be right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was because Kadri nixed the deal to Calgary because he was hoping there was a fighting chance he'd be able to stay in Toronto. If I can butt in here, while we're talking about Tyson Barrie, I was really happy to see him do well last night as well. And I said from the minute he signed in Edmonton in the offseason, I knew he was going to have a bounce back year, because I think his start under Babcock and the way he was kind of being misused in that situation really screwed him over. And I think that at the same time, his play style while it did kind of fit the Leafs system, it wasn't what they needed. They have a guy who plays that style of game already. It's Morgan Riley. But if you look at Barry's production under Sheldon Keefe versus his production under Babcock, if I remember the numbers correctly, I think he had 7 points in 22 games or 23 games under Babcock. And then under Sheldon Keefe, he had 32 points in 47 games, on pace for 56 over the full course of an 82-game season. So I think seeing Barrie go to Edmonton, and especially after it was announced that Oscar Klefbom would miss most of the season, Tyson Barrie going to Edmonton in a situation where he can be that number one power play quarterback and he can play the power play and he can set up McDavid and Draisaitl. I knew he was going to have a bounce back year, and I'm happy he's doing well.
Yeah. And he had a goal in the first game after Babcock as well. And that's when I think everyone thought, oh, we're finally going to see this Tyson Barrie from Colorado. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that, like you said, that's Morgan Riley's spot on this team. But from an opposition point of view, when you watch the Oilers now, Draisaitl and McDavid seem to have this sixth sense going between them. But when Draisaitl did that no-look pass to Barrie, who was flying in from the blue line, I was like, oh no, there's three of them now that are on this different telepathic link going, because that was unworldly, as you said, Peter.
Filthy goal.
Was that your word for that? Because there were a few plays last night that were just like, did that really just happen? Because it was perfect. Barrie just seemed to know what was going to happen seconds before it happened. So a lot of fun to watch. And if there's some found money with these guys landing where they may, then great. All right, so we are approaching the trade deadline. Now we'll kind of throw this out because we've talked about this lots on the Leaf Lounge, what we think is going to be happening with the Leafs, so we can keep this more of a general overall. And I'm telling you guys right now, although the government of Canada did now approve the 7-day quarantine for NHLers. Still, if you're Canadian coming in, it's still 14 days, but if you're an NHLer, it's 7 days. So you can imagine the political conundrum that's going to be causing. But now it's down to 7. So that window is kind of open a little bit more now for North Division teams to get a player. I still think this is going to be one of the worst trade deadlines we've ever seen. I think a lot of the broadcasters are also feeling that way. I've seen James Duthie mention it a few times that we have 10 hours of programming for the TSN trade deadline show. And he kind of rolls his eyes every time thinking of how am I going to get through 10 hours of talking about nothing? Because I just don't think it's a year where there's going to be a lot of trades. So let's start. Old Prof, what do you think? Are we going to be busy on the trade deadline?
You know what? I was hoping you'd ask me a question where my first response was, I don't know. Because I keep saying, I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I agree. I think it's just a crazy year. And I think a crazy season. And I think that what's up in the air is not necessarily the COVID, the quarantine, as much as where's the salary going next year? And that seems to be a huge thing for me. I can't even tell what's going to happen and where it's going to go. And I think that may impact, but I think I'm going to land on, I don't think there's going to be very much action.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's one for you. After action, latest action now is that Nashville, remember early in the season, that's it. We're selling everybody. Nashville's done. Nashville is now in a playoff spot. So just the way that these divisions are set up and the points stay in the division, teams that are apparently dead and sellers suddenly are in playoff spots. So Peter, does that make it possibly setting up for one of the slowest trade deadlines we've seen?
It's very possible. And to repeat what Prof just said, I don't even know what's probably going to happen because there's so many variables happening right now. And I think the big thing is the salary cap, how teams are going to manage that cap. It's going to be flat for a couple of years, and they need to stay under that and not go over. And they don't want to make a deal that they're going to regret in the future. And I believe Alex said this last week. He thinks that maybe Nashville can still probably be a seller despite close to being in, but now is in a playoff spot. I think right now they may hang on to some other key pieces and maybe try and improve in certain areas where, they're maybe not so much of a seller or a buyer. It's just like, if we'll make a move, we'll make a move. It's going to be at a point where we're not going to trade a Philip Forsberg possibly, although it would be nice if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs to try and get him. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. If not, I would love to see what TSN does. I don't know if they're going to bring llamas and run around in the parking lot again, have like a race in the studio.
Llamas are good.
Or Jeff O'Neill asking if there's ketchup on a burger, because I would love to see what TSN is going to do right now, because they have a really great trade deadline show no matter what.
Yeah, they really do. I remember the year of the monkey as well. The monkey was
Maggie the Macaque
picks. That was a good one.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Now, we did see, and this is another reason why I think the actual trade deadline day is going to be very slow, because even if there are a few trades, I think they're going to be well before April 12th. And we saw that with Eric Stahl, who a few people thought might be coming to Toronto. He's gone to, thank goodness for him, he got out of Buffalo and he's in Montreal. That seemed like a steal to me, a third and a fifth to get Eric Stahl. And Buffalo was keeping some of his paycheck as well. So Alex, you can talk about the Eric Stahl one, or just your thoughts on trading in the next couple of weeks here. And should we be ready for maybe to bring out the monkey?
I want to say something different just so I can keep the content fresh, but I'm just going to be ripping a page out of the old Prof's playbook and just say, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Honestly, Peter said it best. There's so many variables to consider. There's the salary cap. There's situations like the 7-day quarantine. There's Alex Galchenyuk's sudden emergence that who knows might kind of make the need for a top 6 forward irrelevance. Then there is teams like Nashville, like we said, who Michael Granlund was the guy that Elliot Friedman wrote down on a piece of paper. But if Granlund's a contributor and Nashville's in a playoff spot, why would they get rid of him, right? So in terms of the trade deadline, I have no idea what to expect. Dubas could sit on his hands and do nothing, or he could pull a Rickard Rakell trade out of his butt. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's all going to come down to if the move's there, they'll make one. But I have no idea. And in terms of the Eric Stahl trade, I think, that was a great trade for Montreal. I liked Eric Stahl's quote when he was asked about what went wrong in Buffalo. And he said, well, I don't have to talk about that. I'm just going to move forward, and I'm excited to contribute in Montreal. So you could tell that he didn't really want to speak too much about his time there. And I can't blame him. I mean, I'm personally kind of rooting for them to break the record, which I believe is 18 game losing streak or 17. Something like that. 17. Wait, so 17. I think they're, yes. Okay. So
17 winless. Yeah.
They're almost there. All right. Yeah, it's pretty depressing to watch down there in Buffalo. But in terms of the trade deadline, I've got no idea what to expect. Maybe ask me 2 weeks from now after we've gotten a bit more of a better look at Galchenyuk and what he's made of.
2 weeks from now is after the deadline. You look real smart then. I told you guys.
Jeez. Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, wow. I thought it was like, I thought the deadline was later than that for some reason. No, it's April 12th.
Well,
that is literally
April 12th. Yeah.
I just want to jump in for a quick second. Alex mentioned Rickard Rakell, and I've been high on Rickard Rakell since, that name on a piece of paper. It looks like that may not happen because he was just recently injured and he's out with an upper body injury. So that could also put a damper on another team in the Anaheim Ducks, or maybe they want to try and offload a player and get a decent return, and that could hamper with an injury right now. So.
Mm-hmm. Or is that a similar situation to Darcy Kemper, where if he's going to be better in a couple of weeks here or better in a couple of days?
Because
I don't know how that works.
Because his injury is just it recently happened. Darcy Kemper's further along in his recovery, so I don't know exactly what the timetable is for Rakell's injury. All I know is that he is out with an upper body injury, length undetermined. It could just be maybe a day-to-day thing, but if it's longer than that, then it is big cause for concern if you're the Anaheim Ducks right now.
All right. We're now getting into the final stretch, and make sure that you follow us on all your favorite social media channels. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Come back every week to check out the Leafs Lounge, where the new motto is, I don't know. So we had a bit of a homework project, and we had originally talked about maybe mean tweets. And I thought, you know what, everyone can be mean and negative and everything else. So then we thought, let's just look for some funny things that we see that are put out on social media. Funny, interesting. They could be mean. They could be conversation getters. I wanted to start with this one. I liked this one. And this wasn't a tweet, so I'm kind of taking it out. But I did an article. It was my 100th article with the Hockey Writers. And it was Sheldon Keefe's interview for Aeroplan members, where fans got to talk to him and ask questions, and really a totally different look at the Maple Leafs head coach. And I thought, like, just how honest he was. I thought the funniest thing that he said was when he was asked about his favorite team, and I thought he's got to say the Leafs on this, right? And he said, I kind of bounced around with my favorite player, Mario Lemieux fan. I was a Penguins fan for a long time. Flipped over to the Flyers when he became a Lindros fan. I was like, what are you talking about here? And, but then he kind of saved himself, because here he says, my dad was and is, well, he admits it a lot less often, but he was a huge Habs fan. I've never been a Habs fan, and I'm certainly not these days, but that was always good competition. Whoever the Habs were playing, I would take the other side. So you save face to Leaf Nation there, and I really got a kick out of that and that interview with Keefe. So anyone else find something interesting on the World Wide Web this week?
So I might be breaking the rules here, but I kind of have two that go hand in hand here, and they're on different ends of the spectrum. So one of them's a tweet, and one of them is a comment on my article about Galchenyuk a couple weeks ago. So the comments in question here, essentially, for those watching that don't know, I wrote a piece about how the way that the Leafs have sent Galchenyuk to the AHL, and they kind of groomed him and gave him about a month to get back into game form before they brought him to the NHL, could pay off and bring big returns. So most of the people in the comments seem to agree with me, and one particular commenter, we're not name dropping, are we? Are we?
Let's not to start.
Okay. We won't name drop. Okay, that's why I asked. A certain commenter said, a career minus 23, 6 teams, think about it. So this was obviously before that series against Calgary. And then the tweet that I want to bring up that goes hand in hand with that is from Kristen Shilton. And I believe Terry Koshin tweeted the same thing, where Jake Muzzin said that Alex Galchenyuk has been by far the hardest worker on the team since he showed up. So I don't know. I just want to bring up those two because I know it's a small sample size, but I believe Kyle Dubas isn't necessarily concerned about the fact that Galchenyuk is on his 6th team and has a career plus minus rating of 20-30. He appears to be a hard worker. And I've watched, based on the games that I've seen, I've noticed that Galchenyuk's also got a little bit of a physical side to him. He's been throwing the body, and I think he's really completed that second line. So I don't know. To that commenter on my post, I just want to say give it time.
Well, like the prof said, he does look bigger, and he is throwing his body around. You look it up, and you're like 6'1". He does look bigger when he's on the ice, and he's playing that way. And what you just said kind of reminded me of. I was watching two screens last night. I was watching UFC and the Leaf game, and there was a guy. He was not the favorite. He wins the fight. He has a great fight, and he said, "I want to prove all the stupid people that they're stupid." That's what he said after. And I'm like, you know what? I bet Galchenyuk is thinking the same thing. Yeah. He was left for dead in the NHL, and he's proven everybody that he's still got something left in him, and way to go with the Leafs to find that.
Maybe he read that comment on my post. Who knows? Maybe that's why he's got 3 points in 4 games so far.
Well, we do have a way of doing that. I know one of the other guys on our writing team put something out about John Tavares, where if you actually read past the headline, it wasn't a negative story, but the headline thought, well, maybe it's negative. And people don't read past that first little bit too often. You got to really hook them to keep them reading. And some people were quite angry about that Tavares headline. But look what happened. The guy played a great game. And so we should say that somebody needs to be better this week before we sign out, because then they'll have an awesome week. Old Prof, how about you? Did you see anything on the interweb this week that had you thinking, giggling, throwing your phone, throwing your computer around? What happened?
Well, if I threw my computer around, then I have to limp and go get it. A couple things come to mind. One is when Alex is talking about the readership. I just want to say I have such a very interesting group of people who read my posts, and they're sort of like family, actually. And they're so gracious with me because, I'm new to this for about 2.5 years. As I say, I used to write about political economic systems and stuff like that. And then suddenly I'm writing about the Maple Leafs. And there's the same sort of research and stuff like that, but people know so much more than I do. And every once in a while, I'll say something just really stupid in one of my posts. And the readers will say, they're so gentle with me. They'll correct me, and I will thank them, and they will continue. And I just want to say thank you to those people who read my posts and understand that you're looking at an old guy who's doing his best, but at the same time makes mistake after mistake after mistake. But the other thing that just keeps coming up for me is I think the way the injuries are described. Now it's either lower body or upper body. And I think next year is just going to be a body injury. Just a body injury. Someplace on his body, he's injured. And it just strikes me as ludicrous. And the other thing I heard somebody say that just got me, it's like the team has gone on a 17-game losing streak, and they say, we just got to go out and play our game. Well, I think they've been playing their game, and maybe they need to play somebody else's game for a while. But how many players in an interview just say, we really have to play our game? And I'm not sure what that means, right? It's just it seems that those are the things that make me smile when I see just the way injuries are described and the way we just got to play our game. I don't know what that means, but you know what? It's just something about hockey. I think sometimes we should write a post on the craziest things hockey players say more than once. It's just, there's so many things that are just part of the litany of the things that hockey players say. I think that would be a fun thing to do, to describe the language of hockey for people, because it's its own world.
Prof, you're kind of like the Jack Campbell of our squad here. Very positive energy around you.
Well, as always, guys, this was a great conversation. We hope our viewers enjoyed as well. And if you want to have your comments read on the Leafs Lounge, please send them to us via social media, put them on the YouTube channels, drop them in Alex's comments section. You never know who he might target there. He might You might say your name next time.
Say something nice.
So,
I just want to jump up for a quick second, and I want to give a shout out to Alex for posting this tweet about a week and a bit ago.
Oh no,
he's got to retire the number 26 for all the legends who wore that number: Jimmy Vesey, Nick Shore, Par Lindholm, Ben Smith, Dan Winnick, Peter Granberg, and Mike Van Ryan. Those are a long list of names of players that really didn't quite pan out. Maybe Daniel Winnick probably had the best out of wearing that number, but that was just something that really caught my attention.
I debated putting Dan Winnick on there because he was actually an effective player, but yeah, the rest of those guys, I noticed kind of a funny trend of the guys that have worn the number 26 in Toronto in recent memory.
Yeah. So FYI, those up and comers in the Leaf system do not wear 26 when you get on the roster.
In your best interest not to.
Great. Okay, there's our insight. We just said we don't know, and clearly we know something. We got to take a while to figure it out. Hope you enjoyed. Drop a comment to us. We'll be reading them next time around. It was a great chat, you guys. I can't wait to see where Leafland takes us to next week, and we get to talk all about it once again. For all of us here at the Hockey Writers, have a great day.
Yeah.